why the aircrafts fly as high as they do, and why don't they fly higher than they do, why don't they fly lower than they do. There are 3 good reasons for aircraft staying as high as they do. The first one, and the most obvious one, is economics. Number 2 is passenger comfort. There's also a third reason which a lot of people don't think about, and that is safety. Basically, the higher you are, the more potential energy you have, the more options you have in case something would happen. If we're up at 37,000 feet and something happens to our engines, for example, or to any other system, it means that we have plenty of time to deal with that problem until we're forced to land. So in a worst case scenario, if we would, for example, lose both of our engines for whatever reason, volcanic ash, then the 737 and all of the modern aircraft are excellent gliders. They will not fall like a rock down. They will actually glide at a ratio of about between 1 to 15 to 1 to 20. So that means for 1 meter dropped, it will go 15 or 17 meters forward. Okay, so that means that if you're flying over mainland Europe, like I am, if you lose an engine at 37,000 feet, you will have an airport within range, right? It will give you a good 60, 70 nautical miles in which you can find an airport and actually glide in and land at. The higher we fly, the more economic it becomes and the quicker we fly. And that has to do with the density of the air, the actual amount of air molecules that fly over the wings. The weather that you see, all the weather around you, tends to stay between the ground level up to about 35,000 feet. All the rain clouds, the turbulence, all of that will be in that region. So if we can climb higher than that, it means that we can avoid most of the turbulence. It means a smoother ride for you, a quicker ride from you from A to B. If that's so good, and if it's so economic to fly high, why don't we fly higher then? I've already mentioned that the true airspeed will increase as the density of the air decreases. The indicated airspeed will stay potentially more or less the same. The stall speed will be the same in relation to your indicated airspeed with altitude, but it will increase with true airspeed. So this means that as we're climbing higher, you'll get closer and closer to your potential low speed, all right, low speed stall. The real reason that we can't climb much higher than we do is because the engines will not have enough oxygen to breathe. The engines needs oxygen to mix up with fuel molecules to burn, to produce the thrust they need. And as the density of the air keeps decreasing, well, so does the thrust of the engine, so does the power of the engines. When the engines cannot produce a climb of 500 feet per minute for a jet aircraft, that's considered our maximum operating altitude. The other thing is that as the altitude increases, so the temperature outside will drop. So while you might be at a nice 20 degrees outside when you're boarding the aircraft on the ground, when we're up to our maximum or optimum altitude, 38,000 feet, the outside temperature might be minus 50, minus 55, or even lower than that. Something that also lowers when the temperature lowers is the speed of sound. So the speed of sound will be constantly decreasing as the temperature decreases. Now, the true airspeed, stall speed, will increase as the altitude increases. As you can see, at one point or another, those two will meet. And when they meet, this is what we call the coffin corner. If an aircraft is actually at that altitude, if you go slower, you'll get into low speed stall. If you accelerate, you'll go into high speed stall. And the reason you go into high speed stall is because an aircraft has something called the critical Mach number. This is the Mach number at which the certain part of the aircraft go into supersonic speed. Typically, we will be flying at Mach numbers of 0.78, 77, 78, something that's about 77% of the speed of sound. If we start to accelerate beyond that and we go over our maximum, our Mach crit, since the aircraft is now flying at 81% of the speed of sound, that accelerated air might actually go faster than the speed of sound, and that will create shock waves. Now those shock waves will create an enormous amount of drag at certain parts of the aircraft, and they will also have the aerodynamic effect of moving the center of pressure, as in where the lift is being taken out on the wing backwards. And those two things combined is going to give some really, really nasty effects on an aircraft that's designed for subsonic and transonic flight. So these are two very distinctive barriers that we cannot cross. And when we're up there, just in between that, when we have only a few knots to high speed stall and only a few knots to low speed stall, that is the coffin corner. So what do we do then? Let's say that we are up there and we would, for whatever reason, get into a low speed situation. Well, first of all, the aircraft will warn us. So it will start sending out messages on our FMC. It will start showing a blinking speed indicator in yellow, saying that we're approaching, we're going past our 1.3 G limit. It will start saying it verbally. And then eventually, if we reach our barbus poles, which is where our actual stall speed is calculated to be, the aircraft will start shaking the control column, which is called a stick shaker. We need to react with a stall escape maneuver. So it's very, very important that every pilot that gets trained understands what a stall looks like and how to get out of it. And the way to get out of it, there's only one thing to do, and that is to decrease the angle of attack of the wings. So as the speed has been decreasing, the aircraft would have pitched up in order to maintain the altitude. That means that the angle between the air and the wing has increased. That needs to decrease in order for the stall to disappear. So we need to get the nose down. So what we do then, when we get these warnings, is that we disconnect any automatics that we have. We make sure that the nose goes forward. Right? So we push the nose forward. We lower any speed brake that might be out, shouldn't be out at this point anyway, and we roll the aircraft wings level if it was in a turn. Then we gently put the thrust on, and the reason that we're not getting the full thrust on immediately is because remember, the 737 has engines mounted under the wings. So if we would add thrust, the engines would then push forward and you'll get an upwards pitch moment, and that might negate the push forward because we have so little aerodynamic control at this point. So this is why we can only add thrust gently as the nose has already been dropped and you see the speed is coming up. You add thrust in order to get more speed, and once the speed is back up in the controllable regime, we'll then gently start leveling the aircraft off and then potentially start to regain your altitude. And the reason that you have to be really gentle at these altitudes is because any fast movement will get you into a secondary stall because of the G-loading on the wings. So if you pull too fast, the G-loading will make the air separate from the wings again. You'll once again be in stick shake. You'll see the barber spoles come shooting up from below you, and then you have to redo the same thing again. So very, very gently pull it backwards until it's level. Thrust is back up to climb thrust, and then climb back up again. If you instead get into a high-speed stall, let's say that we fly over the Alps and you go from a very warm air mass into a very cold air mass, so the change in density might change the airspeed rapidly. Well, in that case, the first thing that you will notice is that the clacker will go off. It will tell you that you're in a overspeed condition. What you need to do then is we need to keep the autopilot and autothrottle engaged. The thrust should come back to respond to this because the thrust is trying to govern outside of the maximum speed, and you raise partial speed brake. Very important to make sure that the thrust doesn't go all the way back to idle, because if you're at a high altitude, the air density is so low that if the engines actually decelerate back to full idle, if you want the thrust to come back up again, it's going to take up to almost a minute to get the thrust back again. So thrust comes back to maybe some midpoint. Very gently raise the speed brakes up to not full but partial speed brake. And the reason you have to be once again really gentle with this is that you're in a high speed situation now. If you suddenly raise the spoilers on the wings, the air is going to accelerate over those spoilers and you might get shock waves over the spoilers. And if you get a shock wave on one side but not the other, the aircraft might just roll over. You can in some extreme scenario override the autothrottle servos to just increase the speed at which the engines are slowing down. But generally that should not be needed. So this is how you handle either a low speed stall or a high speed scenario. As you can see now, we're starting to talk a little bit more about some fairly advanced aerodynamics here. We're talking about true airspeed, we're talking about critical Mach number, things like this. This is why your knowledge of mathematics and physics is going to be so important. You need to understand this, and there are formulas that you need to calculate in order to find your Mach crit and in order to find your stall speed and things like that. Have an absolutely fantastic day, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.